Welcome to a Business Growth Mindset podcast. I'm Kristian Livolsi, and I'm incredibly grateful to be here today and share this episode with you. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you how vulnerability is the key to better business and well-being. Everyone suffers from fear, regret, shame. No one is immune to it, so why hide it? Dr. Brené Brown said, "Only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light." This episode is packed with my personal views and research from leading experts on vulnerability in terms of what it is and how you can show up, enjoy meaningful relationships, experience more support, and build trust. It applies to teenagers, students, corporates, tradies, CEOs, and entrepreneurs, and I know it will help you grow and flourish. To all the business owners and entrepreneurs, the crazy ones, the believers, the doers, the clever makers, the action takers, and everybody else in between, this podcast was designed for you. If this is your very first time listening to my content, make sure you subscribe by clicking the subscribe button and change your notifications alerts so you don't miss future episodes. I am super excited to explore with you what vulnerability is and how you can show up, enjoy meaningful relationships, experience more support, and build trust. Vulnerability comes from the Latin word vulnus, which means wound. Vulnerability, according to Oxford, and that is the dictionary, is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibilities of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. What's important to recognize is that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but rather our greatest strength. It's courage in disguise. Dr. Brené Brown says vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability allows people into our life. It nurtures greater connection, and human connection is something we all desire deeply. It can make you more attractive because it forges authenticity, and guess what? It welcomes feedback. Now, according to Mark Manson, vulnerability is the key to better relationships, but we need to be careful because it's become somewhat of a buzzword in pop culture, and as such can become morphed into something completely different. To me, vulnerability is when you take action on something that you know will make you feel uncomfortable because it exposes you to criticism. Now, you know it's going to challenge people and it's going to stretch relationships. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. For me, sending a deliberate email campaign to my entire list of connections is exactly that, confronting. Some of you may be wondering why, and others might already be feeling that pain, that pain in the stomach. As I monitor who is unsubscribing, I take a few deep breaths and pause. It shocked me that people would report the content as spam or, in a very limited number of cases, abuse. But then again, people don't surprise me much anymore. As humans, we have a strong dependency to be liked by as many people as possible and as often as possible. It's quite disturbing, really, that our need to belong or need for belonging can have a tremendous impact on our decisions. I've spent a long time working on this, and it's fair to say that I'm continuously becoming more resilient, and with each step I take towards resiliency, the more vulnerable and more courageous I become. I had a purpose for sending this series of emails, and for those that engaged with it, they received massive value, which is all I wanted. I was blessed to receive many emails in reply, and I made sure I responded to each and every one of them. I wanted to make a change that was in line with my purpose. I wanted to see who truly valued engagement and connection on a much deeper level. The digital world has created fake economies, fake connections, and fake friendships. Now, you see, I made a choice to clean out my list so that I would speak, engage, and connect to only those that value my connection. Now, here's the net. What's the real value of having 30,000 connections across all your platforms? This is the question that I asked myself. For me, my outcome was simple. If I ended up with even just one meaningful connection at the end of the campaign, then I would have achieved my purpose. So I washed my email list, which had about 6,122 verified individuals. By the end of the campaign, I lost 12% of my audience, but I had an engagement rate of 27%. Now, by engagement, I mean I had 1,653 emails, and from that, I had 214 one-on-one conversations. My diary was filled with a month worth of Zooms. My ability to be vulnerable allowed my courage to drive me and lead me to a deeper, more meaningful understanding of self, but also I had a deeper connection with my audience. Our stories shape and define us. We should not be afraid to share them, so no matter how much pain it causes us. We need to stand in the arena and be brave. We must deliver our purpose and follow our destiny. Brené Brown says that we should embrace the imperfect in us. You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for worthiness. I chose getting my ass kicked over comfort any day. Spending my life in the shadow of others is simply unacceptable for me. But I do understand that for most people, they require this level of comfort. Now, I want to be brave with my life, so I challenge myself and those around me. I want to be the very best version of me, and making mistakes is part of that journey. So, how can you let yourself be vulnerable and more courageous? Well, firstly, you need to understand that vulnerability is uncertainty, it's risk, and it's emotional exposure. It's about realizing not all things are black and white or good and bad. You need to be able to lean into discomfort to fully experience and appreciate the circumstances that are operated with uncertainty, such as creativity, entrepreneurship, innovation, belonging, love, trust, and joy. Learning how to be vulnerable is like a street fight. It becomes easier over time because you build a level of resilience, and that resilience becomes a coping mechanism for you to lean in. The ability to dare greatly is critical, and this stems from the courage required to be vulnerable during uncertain times. Business owners and entrepreneurs live in a constant state of vulnerability. There are many examples of entrepreneurs being vulnerable, and I can share with you countless experiences from my life, but let's focus on some big names like Steve Jobs, Sir Richard Branson, and Saint Mother Teresa, who dared greatly in the face of change, disruption, and adversity. Jobs said, "One thing separates people who achieve from those who only dream. This one thing is asking for help. Can you help me?" Asking for help makes people vulnerable and insecure. Many think asking for help is weakness. Well, it's not, and here's why. A few things happen when you ask for help. It demonstrates respect, shows trust, and it articulates that you have a willingness to listen and learn. This will not only help you learn what you desire, but it will also help you forge stronger and deeper relationships that serve you. For the person helping you, it generates a sense of satisfaction and pride that comes from you demonstrating respect and trust, as well as valuing them for their expertise. Another advantage of asking for help is that it breaks down barriers and limiting self-beliefs. More importantly, by expressing vulnerability and admitting a deficiency, you are saying it's okay to ask for help and be vulnerable. Sir Richard Branson says there is huge value in being vulnerable because it helps you build trust and support. In July 2017, he wrote about why it's okay to be vulnerable. He acknowledges that many people view vulnerability as weakness, yet to him, he sees vulnerability as a great strength because of two compelling reasons. It builds trust and it makes it easy for others to support, follow, and believe in you. For CEOs and business leaders, it starts with accountability. Will you fall on the sword when necessary? And are you willing to own the problem? Or do you deflect, show weakness, and blame others? What will it be? Sir Richard Branson talks about Mandela and Archbishop Tutu, two great leaders who were not afraid of being vulnerable. He says, I saw them cry many times, often had tears in their eyes, and their passion and belief in what they are doing is obvious, and it makes it easy for others to believe in them too. Now remember, vulnerability is admitting you don't know. It's admitting you made a mistake. It's admitting you got it wrong. And it's admitting that you are sorry that you hurt someone. In The Power of Vulnerability by Dr. Brené Brown, she talks about taking off our armor. And this is referenced to our ability to demonstrate effective leadership so we can motivate and empower our stakeholders. Now, vulnerability is not bearing our soul. It's not cowering in the corner, and more importantly, it is not a sign of weakness. It's about being present and being seen. It's about standing in the arena. Theodore Roosevelt in 1910 gave a moving speech, and I want to share it with you right now. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows that in the end, the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. How powerful is that? This epitomizes bravery to me, and I love it profoundly. The difficulty with vulnerability is that it's normally the first thing people seek, and it's the last thing anyone is prepared to show you, because for many, it's weakness. For me, vulnerability is courage and daring. So let's learn a little about courage, daring, and standing in the arena right now. Courage as a noun, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is both the ability to do something that frightens one and the strength in the face of pain or grief. How many of us can relate to moments in our lives where we felt fearful, scared, lost, and even defeated? This is not uncommon, and even the bravest lack courage sometimes when they are faced with adversity. Courage is a quality of spirit and conduct. It permits you to face extreme danger or take action in difficult situations without fear. One-time prisoner of war John McCain defined courage as a brief, singular occurrence, that rare moment of unity between consciousness, fear, and action when something deep within us strikes the flint of love, of honor, of duty, to make that spark, that fire, our resolve. This definition conjures up an image of the lone hero who instinctively, spontaneously, and even against all odds, suddenly takes charge and stands up for virtue. Too often, we mistake courage as physical, but history tells us it's much more. Consider Mandela speaking out against injustice at great personal risk. Entrepreneurs and innovators like Jobs, who took financial risk to follow his heart and dream and innovate. St. Mary MacKillop, whose compassion for others pushed her to stand up for what is right. These are our modern day knights who demonstrate courage daily. You too have the attributes of courage. You simply need to become aware of them, discover your values, and be driven by purpose. But remember, it starts with being vulnerable. If you want to take a deep dive in how to develop courage and use it for decision making, jump into episode 14 of my Business Growth Mindset podcast. Now, vulnerability is about showing up and being seen. It's about standing in the middle of the arena for everyone to see. And this is where shame comes in. This means it's hard to do, especially because we are terrified at the prospect of what people might think, see, or do. The problem is that we are fueled by fear, and this is underpinned by the false belief that we are not good enough. This makes it so hard to show up, let alone stand up. Instead, we spend our life hustling and building false perceptions, and this means no one really sees the true us. We lose our authenticity, and worst of all, we lose our identity. Many business owners attach their self-worth to their revenue and the amount of money they earn. And this can be very harmful to their well-being. When shit goes south, it can have catastrophic impacts on their mental health and physical health. What's important to realize is that being vulnerable and courageous are critical in business, and progress is better than perfection. What's important to recognize about perfection is that it's limiting and it holds you back. It hampers achievement because at its core, it's about earning approval, which can lead to failure. Perfection is a detrimental mindset to establish because it reduces our ability to be vulnerable. It impacts our ability to scale and often makes us live in fear. It tricks us to think that we're not quite ready to stand in the arena, in fear that we'll get our ass kicked. J.K. Rowling famously said, "It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default." So how do we dare greatly in the unknown and live courageously in the face of adversity and shame? Firstly, you must determine what's keeping you out of the arena. Is it fear? Where is it coming from? What do we want, and why do we want to be more courageous? Secondly, we must determine our armor. That is, how are we currently protecting ourselves from being vulnerable? Are we using perfectionism, cynicism, control, or our intellectuality to hold us back? Showing up is about living and being vulnerable, and being vulnerable is about growing. And importantly, we all have the power to stand up in the arena and be heard. Now, despite the challenges and disruption that we are faced with today, we are blessed with an abundance of opportunity. And by developing vulnerability and courage, you will give yourself the best opportunity to grow and flourish. Now, I have really loved hanging out with you today and sharing my knowledge with you. I hope that you found the information encouraging and can use it in your quest to become more vulnerable, show up, and stand up in the arena. If you loved today's episode, please take a minute to rate it and provide a review. This helps others know that the content that I'm sharing is valuable, but also inspires me to share more content with you. Please take care during this time. Be vulnerable and be courageous. And as always, live with purpose. Are you ready to start taking action on your business? Would you like to spend more time with your family? Then call 1-300-643-229 and start building momentum right now. I know you're busy. In fact, you are so busy that you don't have time to work on your business or yourself. Often tossing and turning at night, worrying about the how-tos and the cash flow. How on earth can you possibly get off the hamster wheel so that you can take a helicopter view to see where you'll be in 90 days, 1 year, or 3 years from now? In this program, I will take you from sleepless nights to blissful sleep. You'll have more time with your family and you will have the clarity and direction so you can grow and flourish. Call 1-300-643-229 now and start building momentum.